Any other questions? We've got one speaker card. Mr. Larry Beaton, will you come forward? Thank you.
Larry Beaton, 607 South Moody Road, apartment 1803. Good afternoon. I just very briefly wanted to speak in support of this project for the James House on Main Street. And I think this is probably in your packets, but we did research on this house. This is actually a very historically significant house. It appears on the 1884 bird's eye view of Palatka very clearly next to the Episcopal Church. And in the first Sanborn maps of the city of Palatka for 1885, this house also appears. So, and we actually believe the house may be slightly older than that. The James name that's associated with the house is the same James as the James Hotel. And 3 generations of that family lived in the house and were significant contributors to the community during the period of time that they were there. So I just wanted to take just a very few minutes to make the board aware of the fact of the historical significance of that house.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to say something.
Yes, ma'am.
The Episcopal Church has had that property for a while and been trying to do something with it, and nobody has seen it. Be able to have the funding to do it. I'd like to commend them for coming up with this idea to have the funds to refurbish the house and put it up for sale, and to look at doing it in other places in the community. I'd like to make the motion that we work with them to do this.
There's a motion on the floor, and if I'm correct, your motion is to approve funding. There's a motion to approve funding. Is there a second? Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
Seconded.
Commissioner Moore. Commissioner Moore, second, was recognized. There's a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries by unanimous vote. I'm sorry, we have one opposition by Ms. Griffin.
Chairman, what was the motion? Are we to package a loan agreement and bring it back to the CRA board or the city commission?
Back to the Associated City Commission.
I would think we bring it back to the CRA board and then the commission.
Just a comment. I know I advised that my recommendation was taken to the city commission. Given that this is a request for $82,000, and this year we only have somewhere around 10 to 20 in redevelopment incentives.
Phase one.
I know, but you're making a commitment for future funding, so I mean, we can structure the loan agreement for just phase 1.
But that's what
The motion was for 10,000.
Yeah, I thought it was for
Motion for 10,000, not for 82,000.
Okay.
So let's bring it back to the CRA board. Let's bring the loan agreement back to the CRA board for approval before it goes to the commission. Moving the agenda, we will go to item number 4, which is the public park design approval.
Good evening, Charles Rudd, Palatka Main Street, 205 North 2nd Street. This project came about out of our design committee. Our design committee looks at the physical environment downtown. How do we beautify, improve pedestrian accessibility and enjoyment of the downtown? And the lot in question on 700 block has been used for parking over the years, privately owned. Most recently, the Blues Bar had an agreement and used it for parking, and then that agreement was broken, and the property owner intended to block off to keep people from parking in there, and really was not well maintained and an eyesore, still an eyesore on the block. So the design committee came up with the idea to improve the block and the lot and create a pocket park, a place for people to enjoy, also to use during special events. So it was had multi-purpose use and become an asset to the block. We put together, we were asked to bring back several designs to include some concerns for parking, to be able to utilize it for parking as well. I think those were in the packet.
These were in the packet.
These two designs are in the packet. This is the lot in question, an aerial view. You can see typically anywhere up to maybe 8 cars could fit in there. It's very narrow. Our hope, of course, in the future is that a building goes back on this block. And so what we began to analyze is a way to meet both ends, parking to the rear with a little park space, beginning with allowing for vehicular access. I want to, our design committee chair is here. She wants to address some concerns the design committee had in their original intent with this block, Robbie Correa.
Robbie Gray, 118 Dodge Street, Design Committee Chair. The Design Committee's original intent when we looked at making this a green space or a pocket park, and I will show this because when I say pocket park, nobody understands me, and that's what I'm saying. Anyway, we originally intended it to be specifically in just a green space. If you go down to the 700 block, the landscaping, streetscaping is pretty broad. There is really no place for somebody to sit. Say somebody is there with their spouse shopping and the husband wants to sit outside, there's no place to sit. Some of the merchants really did want to retain a parking component in that lot, but the members of the design committee did feel strongly that the best choice would be a green space. It wasn't ever, it hasn't been for the last few years, hasn't been parking allowed by the previous or the current owner. Also, there's, and it seems to be an adequate amount of parking in that block. There are alleyways on the south side, behind the south side of those buildings, that is access via Oak Street. And there's adequate parking on the side streets and on the street itself, if the merchants chose to park behind their property, which is where they came. So again, the design committee, we discussed this the other day at a meeting, felt strongly that it should be strictly a pocket parking green space versus including a parking component.
I have one question. We got a park that's a block away from there. How does that figure into the need for an additional park?
Well, this pocket park is intended to be used a little bit differently, if you so choose to have it as a pocket park. Pocket parks are usually inserted in between buildings in a downtown setting. It's a place of refuge, usually when there's a lot of activity. And it can also be considered overflow for adjacent commercial spaces, and it can be programmed for special events. For instance, if there is an adjacent restaurant, a lot of times these pocket parks are used for outdoor seating and dining. And for very special events, you can put a stage in there and actually have that as an entertainment area rather than putting it on the street. In my opinion, it's complementary. It's not in competition.
And there's a recommendation that within this proposal, the CRA actually take this property off of we actually pay the ad valorem taxes on the property. What are the current ad valorem taxes?
I believe it came to right around $700.
Mr. Zimmer?
So, Mr. Griffith, is, on this rendering, is the committee recommending this rendering or this graphical depiction of what it could look? Because I see cars there and I think.
Yes.
So, okay, so okay, that's my question. And then secondly, have we done a cost estimate or on how, what, for a passive, non-vehicular park versus a passive park with parking? So we have any idea what the cost is going to be to transform these lots into those type of things?
Let me attempt to enlighten you. At the last meeting, staff was asked to bring back a proposal that accommodated parking and a pocket park. No, I'm doing it. Park component. What we did is, and as Charles showed you, when we looked at this, and the easiest thing to do, since there's existing vehicular access, is to put the parking in the back, because that's not something you would want to see if you're driving down the street. We increased the park space at the front, and we're defining that space with these oversized pots. So staff was directed to bring back a proposal that accommodated both of those program uses. This was then transmitted to the design committee through Mr. Rudd. They met this Tuesday and they took that position. This plan, designed it this way, basically can be what you see here, or you can eliminate vehicular access. You see the pattern where the diamond is in the center. That pattern is repeated, and basically we just add another tree, and you need less potted plants. To answer your question about the cost, there would be a little bit more cost if it was to be just strictly a pocket park, because we would look at putting more seating in there, And obviously with car parking, you don't need that.
So, one more question. So hypothetically, whatever the board and commission decide to do, all this stuff, if that property is sold and the building is redeveloped, these are all easily transplantable. We could remove the bricks or whatever the pavement structures, so that's obviously the way it's gonna be built.
Yeah, the lease actually has that provision in there, and hypothetically, say the property owner opts out of the lease, says, guys, I got somebody that wants to buy this property, we're gonna put a building up, say, okay, that's great, we're gonna take our bricks, we'll do something with the trees, we'll take our product lines and put them somewhere else.
Is there any consideration for the increased risk of having seating in the same area if you've got vehicles coming in and out through ingress and egress?
Yeah, it's something I'm not entirely comfortable with, but I have seen this in downtown settings, and those potted plants are about, they act as bollards. So basically, if a car was to hit it, if they can't get through, based upon the design speed for that parking lot. If you asked me, I would tell you to go one way or the other, make it a beautiful parking lot, or make it a beautiful pocket park.
I'll just let you know that I've got serious concerns about having the vehicular ingress in the same place that we have seating as it relates to this particular thing. That is because it increases the risk involved of any type of accident, which increases liability to the city. Commissioner.
Mayor Hill said exactly what I wanted to say. This proposed picture, what are we gonna do as far as with the safety component to making sure that the citizens who utilize the park are safe, especially if we were to have children within that, in that area with cars going in and out. What can we do to ensure that the safety of not only our adults but children is kept first and foremost?
Yeah, and I acknowledge that, and that's why I'm encouraging you as your staff to take a position on it. Either needs to be a beautiful parking lot or a beautiful pocket park. But this design can go either way easily.
Yeah.
Commissioner Brent.
One time when we first did the city over, we had benches that sat along, a couple of benches that sat along St. John's Avenue. So that when people walked down, they wanted to rest or wanted to sit and enjoy the city, the benches were there. All of a sudden, our police chief that we had said that prostitution was going on and that those benches needed to be removed, and we went to bed one night and the next morning got up and the benches were gone. They also were seats for the bus stops, people who were waiting for the bus. I would like to see us, instead of going to putting a park in, put some of those seats, or if we could have seats in little tables along the street so that people could go along and sit and rest and talk and do the things that we want to have done for tourism. Right now, I've had people call me and say, well, they got a big park, why are we putting another park in? And we do need more parking, so why are we taking parking away? There is a large park on Oak Street, and there is no way for people to come out, go through St. John's and go out to Oak Street. That way they can go around that building and go to 8th Street, but they surely can't go through to Oak Street because the Coca-Cola people own that strip, and the school people park buses and stuff like that, so there's no access to Oak Street from that park. I'm not really happy with seeing a park go in there. If we're gonna fix places for people to sit and enjoy themselves, we can do it all along St. John's Avenue and replace. What happened to those, we had very nice benches along there. And I'd like to see those benches be put back. They'd be on city property. If the benches are still there, it wouldn't cost us anything but we install them.
Okay, are there any other comments?
Well, one other thing, I'm surprised that nobody's really said anything about it yet. Have lowering taxes, you kind of alluded to. We've had discussion over the last month about taking property off the tax roll. And this, this will take, what, $700, I think it was said, take $700 a year.
I think that was the announcer, I don't have to.
Okay. And And I think, you know, the way, I think not only staff, but also the way our citizens actually approached it when we were going to take some properties off the tax roll, they didn't care what the amount was. We gotta start somewhere where we keep our properties on the tax roll and make sure that we're able to provide the services that we currently provide at the level that we currently provide as well. So, you know, I'm just not in favor just because we're going to be taking this property off the tax roll.
Actually, it's not off the tax roll. We are basically paying the taxes for them. And at the last meeting, you approved.
6 in one hand.
Which in essence is the same thing.
Yeah.
I'd like to,
I've got two, if you can.
The lease agreement has been approved and executed, so.
I'd like to also, kind of say, we have a hard time maintaining the level of service throughout with our other parks. And just to add another part to the workload of the individuals that work for our city, I just think that's kind of crazy as well.
I've got two comment cards I want to go ahead and have the speakers come up on. I've got Angela Murtaugh.
Angela Murtha, 726 St. John's Avenue. My building and my business is directly across the street. So this affects me as much as it affects the people on this block, so I'm speaking for that block. Parks, I think they're wonderful in its place. We have a huge park at the waterfront. We also have another park across the street. Parking is extremely important to the downtown as it is now. With the new business that has moved on the 700 block, it consumes the parking. I have people that will park in front of my shop at 10 o'clock in the morning, and they're there till 5 o'clock. They do not move. They do not want people to know that they are in that business, so people think they're in front of.
Causes downtown to see in this particular project how progressive we are in getting this project moving. It's a small project, and if it's in fact 80% of it is in kind, I just think that, and I agree with Commissioner Campbell that it needs to be detailed out if there's a way for the CRA to have an amount not to exceed as it relates to out-of-pocket expenses versus the in-kind, and I think that will cause the project to be expedited.
So, Mr. Griffin, do you have an exact, do you have a ballpark figure as to what they are?
Yeah, I did an estimate based upon the joint concept of public park and parking lot. Keep in mind that it's a more expensive option. You have to buy site amenities, potted plants, additional lighting, and that was at $5,000. So that number is definitely going to come down because essentially all you're doing is creating a great parking lot with 2 canopy trees at the islands that are required by code. So I can tell you not to exceed $5,000 will be plenty. And like I previously stated, we were purchasing landscaping and site amenities, which is already budgeted within the CRA budget for this year. So you're not having to make a budget transfer with this project.
So, would the amount of $5,000 be friendly to the motion in the second? So,
I second it.
so the attaching the right or not to exceed $5,000 is friendly to the motion the second. Is there any other discussion? Call the question. All in favor say aye. I'm sorry, roll call, I'm sorry. It's pulling up. Roll call, please.
Mr. Warren.
Yes.
Commissioner Campbell.
Yes.
Commissioner Norwood.
Yes.
Commissioner Fly.
Yes.
Mrs. Griffin.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Hill.
No. Motion carried with one opposition. Moving the agenda, DPI, item number 5, DPI request for CDB funds for low FM radio equipment purchase. Mr. Griffin.
I'm going to let Mr. Sharp go ahead and lay their request, lay out their request. I'm here to answer.
Good evening, Alex Sharp, DPI Executive Board Member, 900 St. John's Avenue. Well, I had a 2-hour presentation to present to you, but I see that we're getting short on time here. I've been before your predecessors before about this. Just to bring you up to speed very briefly, I know your time's valuable. DPI is, of course, the Downtown Merchants Association. In 2013, I was the president of that organization, and we, as a collective group, we learned that the FCC was allowing for the permitting of new low-power FM radio stations. This is something they don't do on a very frequent basis. We discovered that our area was eligible for it. When I say our area, I mean the city of Palatka. We applied for it. We received it. We have a permit. It's in place. We just now have to build it. To this day, I think we've expended almost $5,000 of our DPI money to move us to this point. We've come to an impasse financially. In order to get us up and running and broadcasting, we've conservatively estimated that we need at least another $10,000 in funds to purchase the equipment. This is a one-time expense. The radio station, the low-power FM radio station, is something very unique in the medium in our world. I was going to regale you with all the uses it can go, but I'll be very quick. The city of Palatka has 10,000 residents. It would reach out to all those residents. As you know, we are the county seat. We have about 70,000 people in the county. At any given point, we have 30,000 plus people in our city. The radio would broadcast live to people in cars listening on their radios. We would use it for special events. We would use it for educational programs. We would use it for emergency situations. Our permitting application expires in August. We don't have the funds to go forward. I'm here on hand and knee asking for assistance from the city of Palatka and specifically the commissioners and the CRA board. We need some kind of help in moving this project forward. We know there's money available. We know it's been budgeted to other programs. We're willing to work with the Main Street on this, but I think we would be missing an opportunity if we didn't take advantage of this and have our own local radio station to use.
Has there been any communication with Main Street on this project?
Informally, I've approached Charles about it before, but there's never been anything in concrete. Charles is here, he can speak for that. He knows that we've applied for it. He knows I want money from him. However, we differ on where that money should be funneled into revitalizing our downtown area. And I don't mean that in any derogatory way. We just differ on what is more important to bring business to our city.
Do we have any more details as to, besides the things you've outlined thus far? Do you have a business plan or something as to how?
Well, we actually have to, we have a guideline that we have to follow for FCC, which requires so much programming and so much hours of educational, public use and so forth on Gratis. I mean, I could provide you with that, but as far as a business plan, it's a one-time cost to set the equipment up and broadcast it. And as I'm not a radio person, but we have done some research on this. Most of your programming you can loop and meet FCC's requirements. For instance, if we wanted to broadcast these meetings right here live, we could do that. We could digitally record them, and we could play them on certain hours for the citizens of Palatka. If you had the Blue Crab going on, you could be broadcasting live, letting the people know that are coming through our area, you know, what the events are and what's going on. If you had a problem at the water plant and you needed to let the businesses and the residents know that you had to boil the water, you could do public service announcements.
How many jobs?
Jobs?
Yeah.
It would be manned by volunteers.
Do you think that you all could train youth, be a component to train youth how to do broadcasting?
Absolutely. We've discussed at length that we should bring the schools on board with this. We think it would be a good tool to allow them to bring students in, classes in, to allow them to broadcast live. Again, the sky will be the limit with the opportunities that you can use with the radio station.
Yes, sir.
My question would be how, if, even though this is a one-time request, does your business plan show what your annual operating cost will be, and how are you factoring that in
place, and I might be speaking out of turn here, but I think there is an annual fee from FCC, but considering that it's a low power FM, I think it's a nominal cost, like $120 a year to maintain that. There will be maintenance with equipment, of course, as equipment breaks and so forth. It's just been a really lean time for the Downtown Merchants Association, and we're very, for lack of better words, we're stretched very tight on our finances at this time. And it's a nominal cost to upkeep.
Mr. Zimmer.
Mr. Mayor, I had some conversation with some of the CRA board members about this item, and I've also communicated with Mr. Deputy, who is the president of DPI, and I sent him an email. My observations and I guess concerns is I sent Mr. Deputy the CRA plan, and I highlighted some specific sections relating to marketing. And as I think everybody knows on this board, that we can only use TIF funds for projects that are specifically listed or implied, that you can make the argument that they comply with the goals and intent of the plan. I've got some concerns that a one-time personal property purchase, which in the past in any other grant program, the city has not funded TVs, anything that you can remove from the building. So a piece of equipment we did not fund it. We funded HVAC, roofs, to remove blanket structures, but we haven't funded a piece of equipment. So I suggested that may or may not be an eligible expense. I also suggested that in most grant or all grant applications, we get a business plan. We get how the organization is going to provide 30 hours plus of programming with no full-time staff. And I've also suggested that in order for us to analyze that request, we should have those documents that we request from everybody else. So we recommend that this item be tabled, the organization bring back those information so the board can obviously make a determination whether this is an acceptable or in the plan, as well as their business plan is something that you want to fund that forwards the goals and missions of the CRA. Yes, sir.
I guess my question would be, what will this radio station do for Palatka and the surrounding areas, the current radio stations that do? And do we want to actually really get into funding a public radio station and a private radio station, making it profile, do advertising, that type of thing? How does that work when, and I guess, to me, that's a public entity, actually taking away business from a private entity.
I'm not sure I understand your question, Commissioner.
They do, the public, you guys will be also be doing advertisement.
No, sir, we're not allowed to advertise.
You're not allowed to
We
do
can't take money from businesses for advertising. We would be giving free marketing for the downtown area.
Right.
And I would, if I can, and I would like to address two things that Mr. Zimmer said. This does fit into the CRA plan with marketing. We purchased billboards on Highway 95 that we don't now own, and put logos and shop downtown with them. So I don't think that it doesn't fit into the CRA plan. However, in deference, I do think if that's the requirement that you want, if you want more documentation of it, I don't have a problem coming back to you at the next meeting. I just want to make the board aware that we are under a deadline for this. As far as competing with the other public radio stations, again, we are not, you cannot come to me with your business and say, Alex, I want to purchase 2 hours of time on your radio station. We can take donations to sponsor hours, but I don't think the free market system is what it is. And as far as 30 hours of programming, I believe I answered that. They have programs now where you can repetitively run things. If I did 2 hours of education about the wetland center in the downtown area, and I wanted to play that every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock, I have a computer program that would allow me to do that.
Back to my question. If you can accept donations, if I can come to you for advertisement, whether it be political, whatever, and I give you a donation rather than paying the local radio station, wouldn't that still be taking advertisement away from the radio station?
Well, I don't know, sir. I don't know how they budget it. I know that we've looked at other models, say like where college has their own low power FM station, and people are allowed to sponsor an educational hour, sponsor an hour on Bartram Trail, sponsor an hour on historical places in the Palatka downtown area. This is brought to you by Libel's Tire. Here is an hour of different houses and the historical significance in Palatka.
I'm always cautious when it comes to spending public funds and getting into areas that we have local businesses that they need.
I agree with you. I'm always give great scrutiny to how my tax dollars are spent, sir. I'm with you on that same thing. But I think this is a very noble project. I think it's a very, it's an opportunity that doesn't come along. Again, I can't stress to you the rarity of the FCC giving out a radio station license to broadcast, which will broadcast to all of Palatka, probably a little bit further too. And it can be used for a multiple of things, and once it's in place, there's not that much maintenance. This is not something that I'm going to be coming back to you the following year and saying, hey, I need another $10,000. Once the equipment's in place, DPI is confident that we'll be able to maintain that and keep it running at an optimum level. We're just having problems with our startup. And again, that's where we're at, and that's why we're before you.
Yes, sir.
Based upon the commentary from the city manager and the response from Mr. Sharp, I move this item be tabled with the understanding that not only will they come back with a business plan, but also Main Street will be consulted, and if there is not a funding source or a mutual reciprocal agreement for funding, then the situation becomes null and void.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Motion been made, properly seconded. Any discussion?
Yes, I would like to say, you know what we forget? That those tax dollars that the downtown merchants are asking for comes from downtown merchants. So I think as we look at this, if they have viable things that they would like to do with that money, it should be considered.
Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. Roll call, please.
We will have a meeting before you all need to get back in 3 months.
Our deadline is August the 3rd.
Okay.
Commissioner Campbell? Commissioner Norwood?
Yes.
Commissioner Clyde?
Yes.
Mrs. Griffin?
She in downtown merchants, she's in something.
Okay, Vice Mayor Brown?
Yes. I'm a downtown merchant, but I don't belong to the group.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Yes. Mayor Hill?
Yes. Motion carries with one extension.
And just for clarification, what exactly, again, is the commission requesting to come back with at the next meeting? So I can,
Come back with the business plan, and also to get to check additional sources with Main Street, and funding sources with Main Street, and if there are no other options, then we can go on.
so just again, and I apologize, just for clarification, if the meeting between Mr. Rudd and myself, he advises me that Main Street has no additional funding for this, it's a moot point.
Well, if y'all can come, if they can come up with one, it shouldn't matter.
Mr. Hood, you want to speak to that? I mean, you all have met before, and there were issues as to, because if there's not a line item, Chairman, if there's not a line item existing to fund this, that means that there's got to be an innovative package put together. Creative financing takes place, or creative funding rather takes place, and if it's creative funding, if it's not identified, then there's no deliberation.
So I just want to clarify, Mr. Sharp and I have spoke, it's not been presented to the Main Street Board. Main Street, there's the board of directors Main Street itself has just a few $1,000s. So I think what we're looking at is that look for CRA funds that are currently designated elsewhere, that would then be transferred to this project.
Look, we're not suggesting that that would be transferred.
Looking for any other viable funding options. So your scope has not been limited, based upon the understanding of what the motion was.
In the spirit of clarification, I also would welcome conversation about tying this to the CRA plan, because that's a foundation that everything else has to rest on. If it's not something that the CRA plan contemplates, you either have to amend the plan or else you can't do it. So that's not something that you have discretion about. So I'm not saying it does, I'm not saying it doesn't. I haven't really looked at it. It's not the most commonly thought of method of applying CRA funds, but I'm not saying it can't be done. However, the word creative, when it comes to the law, causes me some heartburn. And
Think out the box, will you think out the box?
sometimes thinking out of the box gets you in the box.
No, it doesn't. Not in my box.
All right, so we have the orders as it relates. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I'll work with Mr. Sharp and give him the list of documents. I believe that we need to review in order to make that decision, as well as facilitating that discussion with Mr. Rudd.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you back. Moving the agenda to other business, item number 6, business recruitment grant update, 700 St. John's Avenue.
Yes, sir, Jonathan Griffin, project manager. This is just a quick update. Unfortunately, the CUPS venture has failed. We have verified that with one of the partners as well as the grantee, which was the property owner. Mr. Middlebrook is here with us tonight, and he was one of those partners, and he is still actively seeking to open up a restaurant in the downtown area. So we will be working with him over the coming months, trying to facilitate his going into business, and you might see an application for you for funding assistance.
Sure, thank you. Moving to item number 7, CRA organization. In lieu of where we are right now, I would suggest that we table this item to discuss it at a different time. I would entertain a motion to do so.
Make the motion to table.
Motion to make the table. Second, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Discussion regarding CRA meeting date and time. Staff, please.
Mr. Mayor, that was brought up, I think, by Commissioner Flagg in the past. He's requested a consideration of a non-city commission meeting day for the CRA meeting date and time. And I know you've asked for that in the
Based
past.
upon 2 things.
What's going on right now?
What time it is right now, and also the CRA actions serve as a recommendation, and it does not give staff the fairness of being able to put together the information from the CRA to properly present it. And so when the same day and the information is expected to be transferred 5 minutes later, it is not fair to staff to be able to have that ready, and you don't have an opportunity to put your other hat on as commissioner.
And I agree. Is there any more discussion on this? Commissioner Brown, you have anything?
Well, you know, I said we get a 2 zones of it. We get it here and then it goes to our city commission. When we talk about the organization or whatever we're gonna talk about with the CRA committee, I would like to see more people involved in our CRA and maybe have us a little different from the commission. To have other people involved. I find out with cities and other functions work better when they have more citizen input, and to remind them that they are making recommendations to us. We sit here, we hear it, and we go right over it again for a second time in just a little while. I think that in some things that come up, we do need more citizen input, as we were talking about the parking. I think more of the people that affected needed to have some input into it and some recommendations back to us before we get it. And I think that we need to look at it when we talk about our organizations of our CRA.
Mr. Zimmer, Mr. Mayor, if you want to table that, with the discussion of the next CRA.
Motion is made, is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made, seconded by Commissioner Brown.
Just quickly, we'll give alternatives, date and time, so there's adequate preparation. And regardless of if the CRA organization is changing or not, you have more than 2 weeks between those, so we'll provide that.
When we take, even though it's being tabled, can you make sure that this is put somewhere up higher on the agenda, because it's been tabled a few times now, and it's something that really needs to be addressed.
Ms. Lynch got the same concern, she wanna be put up high. She asks me every time.
I bring good news. Let's talk about the bright spots.
There's a motion and a second on the floor, call the question, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to reports. Ms. Lynch, Small Business Development Center, fourth quarter annual report.
Cheryl Lynch, 1100 Beach Street from the Small Business Development Center. You should have received the annual report in your packet. I'll make it real quick. The hours, total consulting hours, hit over 1,000. I was the consultant within our UNF region of 18 counties that had the most consulting hours last year. In addition to the ratio and per capita, we excelled in that area as well. Since the program started in May of 2012 through December 2014, there's been 81 jobs created, 29 of them retained, and 32 business starts. We happy to entertain any questions that anybody may have.
I just always get you to tell me about the city of Palatka.
85% of those are for the city of
All
Florida.
right, now you don't have to tell me nothing else. If you're doing stuff in the city of Palatka, you putting money in the pot for you. That's what we want to know, and we want to see happen.
And the success story that was in your packet as well. This business owner was submitted as the veteran small business owner of the year through the SBA. We should find out late April, early May if they were awarded. So I met the SBA today, that's why I was a little late. I was pushing to get Putnam County on the map to receive some awards.
Or either, comment? Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Historic Neighborhood Association, Mr. Gagnon.
Yes, thank you.
Guy on 703 F Street, 558. I wanted you guys to be aware of the stop signs that we put in recently. If you haven't gone through the neighborhood, they're terrific. They are making a difference by making it all their stops. And they really look nice. The next big project that we're looking at, after we get through the one we didn't get through tonight, is looking at traffic calming on River Streets. This has been an issue over the years. We've had a recent accident over there. We have to address it. So I'm working with Jonathan and the police department to see what we can do about that. Thank you.
Let's make one more thing, too. Can we start getting, what we have in hand in our packet, where we will have it also here in the updates as well as minutes as well?
Sure. One other thing I want to mention, the Porch Fest, the Augur Porch Fest for the south side is going to be and then we'll.
Bobby Gray on 18 Dodge Street. We are having our first Porch Fest Palatka event. It's actually an event that's started in Ithaca, New York in 2007, has been now going on nationwide in the US and in Canada as well. Basically, it's a music festival going porch to porch where neighbors and visitors can go from porch to porch for the different music venues on each porch that is involved. And there'll also be food available. The event's on April 25th, which is a Saturday, from 1 to 7 p.m. And we also have a plenty of art show at Hannah Hall during that time.
Thank you, Ms. Tucker.
I'm pretending to be a north side person for today too, because none of them are here and they asked me to do this. They really had nothing more to say. However, this is the Putnam County Historical Society. We are having a dedication for the Bronx Mulholland House Historical Marker on Saturday, February 21st at 9 a.m. so that Mayor Hill won't miss the azalea passage. So anyway, everybody's welcome. Please come. Thank you.
Same request also from the north side.
They're not here.
Same
Can you pass that?
Oh, the same,
that
I'll
on.
pass that
I'll
along.
notify both of the presidents.
Any comments on the board? See no comments, there's a motion to adjourn, is there a second? Stand adjourned, Mr. 6. We will take a 5-minute recess.